My mother uninvited me from the family trip. I bought the hotel. The email arrived at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, sent from my mother's iPad with the subject line, Family Trip Update, please read. I was still at my office in downtown Seattle, debugging code for our latest app release, when the notification pinged. Nothing unusual there. I'd been pulling 16-hour days since closing our Series C funding round 3 months ago. What was unusual was my mother, Patricia Caldwell, emailing me anything that wasn't a forwarded chain letter or a passive-aggressive article about successful children who forget their families. Dear Michael. After much consideration and discussion with your father and Uncle Robert, we've decided it would be best if you didn't join us for this year's family reunion at the Grandview Resort. Given the ongoing tensions regarding Grandma Helen's estate, we feel your presence might disrupt the family harmony we're hoping to achieve. We know you'll understand that sometimes family comes first, and right now, that means putting Danny's needs ahead of your own. He's been struggling since the divorce, and this trip is important for his healing, *. We hope you can use this time for self-reflection. Love. Mom. I read it 3 times before the words actually registered. 28 years old, founder and CEO of a company now worth $340 million, and my mother was uninviting me from our annual family trip like I was a problematic +1. The ongoing tensions she mentioned were about my grandmother's will. When Grandma Helen died 6 months ago, she left me her house in Bellevue, worth about $1.8 million, and a trust fund containing another $2.3 million. Not because I needed the money, but because, as she'd written in her will, Michael is the only one who visited me every Sunday, who remembered my stories, and who never asked me for anything. My brother Danny, 3 years older and perpetually unemployed despite his MBA from Stanford, had contested the will immediately. He claimed I manipulated a senile old woman, which was rich considering he'd shown up to exactly 2 family dinners in the past 5 years before Grandma's diagnosis. My parents, naturally, took his side. They always took his side. Danny was the golden child who could do no wrong, even when doing wrong was literally all he did. Failed startup after failed startup, each funded by Dad's construction business. A marriage that imploded after 18 months when his wife caught him cheating. Credit card debt that mysteriously disappeared every time he moved back into the family home. But somehow, I was the problem child for refusing to bankroll his latest, revolutionary, business idea, a subscription box for craft beer that already existed in 17 different variations. I grabbed my phone and called my dad. Straight to voicemail. Hey, Dad, it's Mike. Got Mom's email. Call me back. Nothing. I tried my sister Rebecca in Portland. She answered on the 4th ring, sounding tired. I'm sorry, Mikey. I really am. But you know how Mom gets when Danny's involved. She thinks if we all just pretend everything's normal, somehow it will be. So you're okay with them uninviting me? A long pause. I think, maybe it's better this way. Just for this year. Let things cool down. Even Rebecca, the one family member I thought actually liked me, was choosing them over me. I hung up and stared at my computer screen, where lines of code blurred together. The Grandview Resort. I'd heard Mom talking about it for months, some luxury place up in the San Juan Islands that cost $800 a night per room. The family harmony retreat where they could all bond over what a disappointment I'd turned out to be. That's when I had the idea. I spent the rest of that night researching the Grandview Resort instead of sleeping. Built in 1987, 127 rooms, situated on 43 acres of waterfront property on Orcas Island. Average annual revenue of $18.2 million. And most importantly, it had been quietly on the market for 8 months. The owner, a 74-year-old named Margaret Thornfield, was looking to retire. Asking price, $34 million. I had $47 million in liquid assets after the Series C, not counting stock options. By 6 a.m., I was on the phone with my lawyer, Jessica Chin. You want to buy a hotel? She asked, and I could hear her brewing coffee in the background. Michael, it's barely dawn. Are you having some kind of breakdown? Can you make it happen quickly? Like, within 2 weeks? Theoretically, yes, if you're paying cash and the seller is motivated. But why the rush? This isn't exactly your usual investment profile. I gave her the abbreviated version. Jessica had handled my family's legal drama before. She'd been the one to defend Grandma Helen's will against Danny's contest. She knew exactly how toxic things had gotten. Oh, she said when I finished. Oh, this is delicious. You want to own the hotel where they're staying. I want to control their experience, yes. Michael, I have to ask, what exactly are you planning to do? Because if this is about evicting them or making their stay miserable, we could be looking at harassment lawsuits. Nothing illegal. I just want them to understand what it feels like to have someone else hold all the power for once. There was a pause. Give me until noon. I'll call Margaret's attorney. While Jessica worked her magic, I dove into the resort's financials. The numbers told a story of steady decline, not catastrophic, but enough to explain why Margaret wanted out. Occupancy rates down 12% over 3 years. Revenue per room dropping steadily. Nothing that couldn't be fixed with better management and some targeted renovations. This wasn't just revenge, it was actually a decent investment. At 11:43 a.m., Jessica called back. Margaret says yes, but she wants to meet you in person before signing anything. She's protective of her staff and wants to make sure you're not planning to get the place. Can you be in Friday Harbor tomorrow at 2 p.m.? Book me on the next seaplane. Already did. And Michael? She's asking for $36 million now. She knows you're motivated. An extra $2 million for the privilege of ruining my family's vacation. Worth every penny. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in months. I called my grandmother's old number. It had been disconnected, of course, but I needed to hear her voice in my head. Grandma Helen would have understood this. She'd grown up poor in rural Montana, married my grandfather when she was 19, and built their life through sheer determination and strategic thinking. Sometimes, sweetheart, she told me once, the only way to make people respect you is to show them what they lose when they don't. The family reunion was scheduled for July 15th through 22nd. 7 days, 14 family members total, 8 rooms booked. I had their confirmation numbers. Mom had CC'd me on the original booking emails before deciding I was persona non grata. In exactly 19 days, the Caldwell family would arrive at a resort owned by the son and grandson they'd thrown away. They just didn't know it yet. I smiled for the first time in weeks and started planning their welcome. The seaplane touched down in Friday Harbor at 1:47 p.m., 13 minutes ahead of schedule. I'd spent the 40-minute flight from Seattle reviewing Margaret Thornfield's background, Harvard MBA, former VP at Marriott, purchased the Grandview Resort as a retirement project that turned into a 20-year obsession. The kind of woman who'd see right through any bullshit I tried to serve her. She was waiting for me at the marina in a forest green Range Rover that had seen better decades. Margaret Thornfield looked exactly like Central Casting would order for, distinguished hotel owner, silver hair in a practical bob, weathered hands that spoke of actual work, and eyes that missed nothing. "You're younger than I expected," she said, shaking my hand with a grip that could crack walnuts. "And you look angry. That worries me." The drive to the resort took 23 minutes through winding roads flanked by Douglas firs and glimpses of blue water. Margaret used every minute to interrogate me. "My attorney says you want to close in 2 weeks. Nobody buys a hotel that fast unless they're running from something or towards something. Which is it?" "Towards something," I said carefully. "The hospitality business isn't tech, Mr. Caldwell. You can't just iterate your way out of problems. When Mrs. Patterson in room 237 complains that her towels aren't soft enough, you can't push an update and fix it. You have to actually care about her towels." "I understand that. Do you?" "Because I've had 3 other buyers in the past year. Tech money, all of them. One wanted to turn it into a corporate retreat center. Another planned to gut it for luxury condos. The third thought he could automate everything with iPads and fire half my staff." She glanced at me sideways. "I sent them all packing. We rounded a curve and the Grandview Resort spread out below us like something from a postcard. The main lodge was all timber and stone, designed to look like it had grown from the forest itself. Guest cottages dotted the hillside leading down to a private marina where kayaks bobbed in the afternoon sun. It was exactly the kind of place my mother would choose, impressive enough for her Instagram posts, isolated enough to ensure I couldn't just show up uninvited. Except now I was about to own it. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Margaret said, parking near the main entrance. 43 acres, 127 rooms, and every single staff member knows the names of our regular guests' children. That's not something you can buy, Mr. Caldwell. It's something you build. Inside, the lobby smelled like cedar and lavender, with a massive stone fireplace dominating one wall and windows offering panoramic views of the Sound. Margaret introduced me to Thomas Rodriguez, the general manager who'd been with the resort for 12 years, and Sarah Chin, no relation to my lawyer, who ran guest services. "Thomas, Sarah, this is Michael Caldwell. He's interested in purchasing the resort." Thomas was polite but guarded. Sarah barely concealed her skepticism. I could practically hear them thinking, another tech bro with more money than sense. "We have a reservation coming up," I said, pulling out my phone. "July 15th through 22nd. Caldwell family party, 14 guests, 8 rooms. I'd like to review their arrangements." Margaret's eyebrows shot up. "Family? My family. They uninvited me from the reunion, so I thought I'd buy the venue instead." The lobby went dead silent. Thomas and Sarah exchanged glances. Margaret stared at me for a long moment, then threw back her head and laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "Oh, that's rich. That's absolutely perfect." She wiped her eyes. "Mr. Caldwell, I think we need to discuss terms." We spent the next 3 hours in Margaret's office, a cozy space overlooking the resort's herb garden where she grew ingredients for the restaurant. The negotiation felt less like a business transaction and more like a therapy session conducted by the world's most expensive counselor. "Tell me about your family," Margaret said, pouring coffee from a French press that probably cost more than most people's rent. So I did. I told her about Danny's latest failure, a food truck venture that lasted exactly 6 weeks before he defaulted on the loan Dad had co-signed. About my mother's Christmas dinner speech 3 years ago where she'd introduced me to guests as our son who's too busy for family. About the birthday parties where my achievements were mentioned in passing while Danny's participation trophies from high school got displayed like Olympic medals. "And the inheritance dispute?" Margaret asked. "Grandma left me everything because I was the only one who showed up. Danny's claiming she had dementia, even though she was sharper than any of us right up until the end. The probate hearing is set for August 12th, 3 weeks after their Little Harmony retreat." Margaret nodded slowly. "So they're using this trip to strategize without you. Making sure everyone's aligned before the hearing." The thought hadn't occurred to me, but it made perfect sense. Uncle Robert was an attorney, semi-retired, but still sharp. Aunt Linda had been Grandma's healthcare proxy. My cousin Jennifer worked in estate planning. Of course this wasn't just a vacation. It was a war council. "You know what's funny?" I continued. "I don't even need the money. My company's valuation hit $340 million last quarter. But it's not about the money. It's about what it represents. For once in my life, someone chose me first. And now they want to take that away. They want to rewrite history. Make it so even my grandmother's love comes with an asterisk." Margaret set down her coffee cup with a decisive clink. $35 million. Cash. 2-week close. And I have conditions. I'm listening. First, you keep my entire staff for at least 18 months. No layoffs, no restructuring, no efficiency experts. These people are family to me. Agreed. Second, you don't do anything that damages the resort's reputation. I don't care what your family did to you, the Grandview's name stays clean. Of course. Third, I stay through your family's visit as a consultant. I want to see this play out, and I want to make sure you don't do anything stupid that lands us both in legal trouble. I laughed despite myself. You want front row seats to the drama. Mr. Caldwell, I've been in hospitality for 37 years. I've seen every kind of family dysfunction imaginable. But I've never seen someone buy a $35 million hotel to get revenge on their relatives. This is either going to be brilliant or catastrophic, and I'm too curious to miss it. We shook hands at 6:23 p.m. Margaret called her attorney from the office phone while I sat there, still processing that I was about to become a hotel owner. The legal machinery started grinding immediately: purchase agreements, due diligence schedules, financing confirmations. One more thing, Margaret said after hanging up. Your family's reservation. They booked the Sunset Cottage for your parents, the Harbor View Suite for someone named Robert and Linda, and 5 standard rooms for the others. Premium accommodations, all of them. What would you recommend for modifications? Nothing vindictive. Nothing that screams revenge. But as the new owner, you'll have every right to make operational decisions about room assignments, dining reservations, activity availability. Her smile was sharp as broken glass. Customer service is all about managing expectations. I caught the 8:15 p.m. seaplane back to Seattle, my phone buzzing with messages from Jessica about preliminary contracts and wire transfer authorizations. But all I could think about was the look on my mother's face when she realized her disowned son now controlled every aspect of their family harmony retreat. 17 days and counting. The due diligence process moved faster than I'd ever seen a deal close. By Thursday morning, I had 3 different inspection teams crawling over every inch of the Grandview Resort while Margaret watched them like a hawk protecting her nest. The structural engineer found minor foundation settling in the east wing. The financial auditor flagged a $47,000 discrepancy in the 2019 books that turned out to be a misfiled catering invoice. The environmental consultant spent 6 hours testing water samples and pronounced everything pristine. Meanwhile, I was learning exactly how complicated it was to run a luxury resort. Thomas Rodriguez walked me through the daily operations report over coffee in the main dining room, a document that read like mission control for a space launch. Room 847 has a leaky faucet, maintenance is on it. The Hendersons in the Lighthouse Suite are celebrating their 40th anniversary tomorrow, we've arranged champagne and roses. Mrs. Yamamoto called 3 times about dietary restrictions for her son's wedding reception next month, he's apparently developed a sudden allergy to shellfish. Thomas looked up from his tablet. And your family's reservation has been calling with changes. My stomach dropped. What kind of changes? Your mother called yesterday asking about upgrade availability. Specifically, she wants to move from the Sunset Cottage to the Presidential Suite. When Sarah told her it was booked, she mentioned that her son owns a very successful company and they're used to VIP treatment. I nearly choked on my coffee. She played the "my son is rich" card. Gets better. This morning, someone named Danny called asking about group discounts for activities. Deep sea fishing, wine tours, the helicopter scenic flight. He seemed shocked that the helicopter tour costs $800 per person. Did he book it anyway? Thomas shook his head. He asked if we offered payment plans. Of course he did. Danny had probably assumed that Mom and Dad were covering all the extras, not realizing that Dad's construction business had been struggling since the pandemic. I'd seen the indicators: delayed invoices, smaller Christmas gifts, my mother's suddenly frequent mentions of budget-conscious restaurants. Margaret appeared at our table carrying a manila folder thick with documents. Preliminary contracts are ready for signature. Your lawyer is flying up this afternoon to review everything. But we have a small problem. What kind of problem? Your family isn't the only Caldwell reservation we have that week. She opened the folder and pulled out a booking confirmation. Daniel Caldwell, checking in July 13th through July 15th, same last name, different party. He booked the Harbor Master's cabin, our most expensive standalone accommodation. $2,400 per night. I stared at the reservation. That's my brother. Danny's his nickname. He made this reservation separately from the family group. Paid with an American Express card that our billing system flagged as requires authorization for charges over $500. Margaret's expression was grim. I've seen this before. He's planning to surprise your family by showing up early in the premium cabin, then probably expecting them to cover his bill when the card gets declined. The audacity was breathtaking, even for Danny. He contested our grandmother's will, convinced our parents to uninvite me from the reunion, and now planned to stick them with a $7,200 bill for his pre-reunion vacation. There's more, Margaret continued. The cabin he booked. It's got a private chef option, premium bar service, and access to the owner's yacht. He checked all the boxes. Current projected bill is just over $15,000 for 2 nights. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. This wasn't just about the family reunion anymore. Danny was planning something bigger, probably his usual routine of living large on someone else's credit, then playing victim when the bills came due. Except this time, he'd have a captive audience of extended family to witness his performance. What happens if we own the resort when his card gets declined? Margaret's smile was razor-thin. As the new owner, you'd have complete discretion over how to handle delinquent accounts. 15 days until Danny arrived. 17 days until the full family reunion. And now I had leverage I hadn't even known existed. This was going to be even better than I'd planned. The final purchase documents arrived at my Seattle office on Monday morning, delivered by courier in a leather portfolio that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Jessica had red-penned exactly 3 clauses, minor adjustments to the liability coverage, but otherwise declared the deal cleaner than a whistle and twice as sharp. You're really doing this, she said, watching me sign page after page of contracts. $35 million to mess with your family's vacation. $35 million for a profitable hospitality investment that happens to come with entertainment value, I corrected, initialing a property transfer addendum. Right. And I'm sure the IRS will be fascinated by that explanation. The wire transfer went through at 2:47 p.m. Pacific time. By 3:15, I was officially the owner of the Grandview Resort, 43 acres of prime Orcas Island real estate, and the upcoming hospitality experience of 14 relatives who'd written me off as a disappointment. Margaret called an hour later, sounding gleeful. Congratulations, Mr. Owner. Your first executive decision is waiting, Danny called again. He wants to add the couple's massage package and private wine tasting to his Harbor Master's cabin stay. Another $3,200. Should I tell him it's available? Approve everything he asks for, I said. In fact, proactively suggest upgrades. The works. That's deliciously evil. I like you more every day. I spent Tuesday morning in meetings with my actual company, the one that had generated the fortune I was now spending on family drama. Our lead developer, Priya, cornered me after the quarterly review. You seem different, she said. More focused. Less angry. Did you finally get therapy or just find a really good dealer? I bought a hotel. She blinked. I'm sorry, what? Remember how my family uninvited me from their reunion? I bought the hotel where they're staying. Priya stared at me for a long moment, then slowly started grinning. Boss, that's either the most petty thing I've ever heard or the most brilliant. Possibly both. I'm hoping for both. Wednesday brought unexpected complications. Margaret called at 6 a.m., early enough that my first thought was emergency, but her tone suggested otherwise. We have a situation. Your mother called the resort directly this time, not the booking line. She spoke to Thomas, identified herself as Patricia Caldwell, and asked for a detailed accounting of all charges associated with their group reservation. I sat up straighter in bed. What kind of accounting? Everything. Room rates, tax breakdown, cancellation policies, additional fees. She specifically asked about penalties for reducing their party size and whether we offered refunds for unused accommodations. My blood went cold. They're planning to cut people from the trip. That's what Thomas thinks too. She also asked about our policy for extending stays. Apparently someone in their party might want to remain an extra few days for legal consultations in Seattle. Uncle Robert. They were planning to extend his stay so he could meet with attorneys before the probate hearing. This wasn't just a family reunion and strategy session, it was turning into a full legal war council, with multiple phases and contingency plans. There's more, Margaret continued. I pulled the phone records from our reservation system. Your family has made 47 calls to the resort in the past 2 weeks. 47. The average guest makes maybe 3 calls total. What are they asking about? Everything. Room configurations, proximity to each other, noise levels, privacy features. Your cousin Jennifer specifically asked whether conversations in the Sunset Cottage could be overheard from adjacent buildings. This isn't vacation planning, Michael. This is reconnaissance. I felt the familiar burn of being outmaneuvered by my family's collective scheming. Even when I held all the cards, they were still 3 moves ahead, planning contingencies I hadn't considered. But they'd made one crucial error in their calculations. They didn't know that their reconnaissance target was now listening to every word they said. Margaret, I need you to document everything. Every call, every question, every request. And I want to be there when Danny arrives. Wouldn't miss it for the world. 11 days and counting. Thursday morning brought a call that changed everything. I was reviewing quarterly projections when my phone buzzed with Margaret's number. Your brother just called the resort, she said without preamble. But not about his reservation. What do you mean? He asked to speak with the owner. Said he had a business proposition that could be mutually beneficial. Thomas told him the ownership was in transition and he'd need to call back next week. I nearly dropped my phone. A business proposition. Gets better. He specifically mentioned having inside knowledge about the hospitality industry and access to high-net-worth investors who frequent premium resorts. He wanted to discuss partnership opportunities. The audacity was staggering, even for Danny. He was trying to leverage his own family reunion reservation into a business deal with the resort he didn't know I owned. Classic Danny, always looking for an angle, always convinced he could talk his way into easy money. Did he mention what kind of partnership? Marketing consulting. Apparently he has connections in the luxury travel space and could help drive bookings from wealthy tech executives. Margaret's voice dripped with amusement. He specifically mentioned his brother's success as proof of his networking capabilities. I had to laugh. Danny was literally trying to sell access to me, while staying at a resort I owned, during a reunion I'd been banned from. The circularity was almost poetic. There's more, Margaret continued. After Thomas hung up, Danny immediately called the concierge line asking about business center facilities and whether we could arrange a private meeting room for July 14th. He wants to host what he called a casual networking event the night before your family arrives. He's planning to pitch other guests. That's what we think. Sarah checked the guest list for that weekend. We have the Weinstock family from Microsoft, a retired Amazon VP, and the founders of that meal kit company that went public last year. Danny's going fishing in our guest registry. This was spiraling beyond family drama into potential business fraud. Danny was essentially planning to run unauthorized networking events at my resort, using my family's reservation as cover, while positioning himself as having insider access to both the hospitality industry and Seattle's tech scene. Margaret, I need you to do something for me. When he calls back about the owner meeting, schedule it for July 16th at 2 p.m. Tell him the new owner is very interested in his proposal. You want to meet with him face to face. While your family's there. I want him to pitch his business plan to me without knowing who I am. Let him dig his own grave. Friday brought more intelligence from Margaret's staff. Apparently, my cousin Jennifer had called asking about the resort's discretion policies regarding guest activities and whether staff were required to report conversations they might overhear. My Aunt Linda wanted to know about the nearest medical facilities, claiming she was concerned about my grandfather's blood pressure medication during travel. But the most interesting call came from my father. He asked about ownership transition, Margaret reported. Specifically, whether the new owners plan to honor existing reservations and what the change might mean for guest privacy. When Thomas assured him everything would remain the same, your father asked if there was any way to get contact information for the previous owner, meaning me. Why would he want to contact you? That's what's interesting. He claimed the family had stayed with us before and wanted to send a thank you note to the lovely woman who'd made their previous visit so special. But Michael, I checked our records going back 5 years. Your family has never stayed here before. This is their first reservation. My father was lying, which meant he was fishing for information. But about what? The pieces started clicking together. 47 phone calls. Questions about privacy and discretion. Danny's mysterious business networking plans. Uncle Robert's extended legal consultation stay. They weren't just planning to strategize about the inheritance during their reunion. They were planning something that required absolute secrecy, complete privacy, and potentially needed to be hidden from me specifically. And I owned the venue where they planned to do it. 9 days until Danny arrived. 11 days until I found out what my family was really up to. Saturday morning brought the call I'd been dreading. My phone rang at 7:23 a.m. with my father's number, the first time he'd contacted me directly since Mom's uninvitation email 3 weeks ago. Michael. His voice was strained, formal. We need to talk. I'd been expecting this moment, but my heart still hammered against my ribs. About what, Dad? About the Grandview Resort. About what you've done. The line went silent except for the sound of my own breathing. How could he possibly know? Margaret and I had been careful. The ownership transfer was buried in corporate filings that wouldn't be public for weeks. I don't know what you mean. Cut the shit, Mike. I've been in construction for 32 years. You don't make the kind of calls your family's been making without someone noticing patterns. When I asked about the ownership change, they were too polished, too careful. Nobody trains staff that well on messaging unless something unusual is happening. My father was sharper than I'd given him credit for. All those years of managing construction projects, dealing with permits and inspections and city officials, he developed an instinct for when people were hiding something. 47 phone calls, Michael. Your mother counted them. 47 calls to a resort we've never stayed at before, and every single employee had the exact same talking points about the ownership transition. That doesn't happen by accident. I closed my eyes, running calculations. Deny everything. Come clean. Try to bluff my way through. I know you bought it, Dad continued. I don't know how or why, but I know. The question is what you're planning to do with that information. The exhaustion in his voice surprised me. I'd expected anger, accusations, threats of legal action. Instead, he sounded tired. Defeated. Why does it matter? I asked. You didn't want me there anyway. Jesus Christ, Mike. You bought a hotel. A $30 million hotel. To get back at us for one family trip. It wasn't one trip, Dad. It was 30 years of trips. 30 years of Danny's failures being my fault somehow. 30 years of you choosing him over me every single time. That's not, he stopped, took a breath. Look, maybe we haven't always handled things perfectly. But this? This is crazy, even for you. What's crazy is a family that throws away their most successful member to protect their biggest failure. Danny's struggling. The divorce, the business problems. Danny's been struggling for 15 years. And somehow that's always my responsibility to fix or my fault for not fixing or my problem for existing in the first place. The silence stretched between us, 30 years of accumulated resentment filling the space where understanding should have been. Your mother doesn't know, Dad finally said. About the hotel. I figured it out, but she's still planning the trip like everything's normal. Uncle Robert's flying in early for some legal meetings. Jennifer's bringing presentation materials for what she's calling a family financial planning session. Danny. He paused. Danny's got some kind of business pitch he wants to make to other guests. I know about Danny's networking plans. Then you know this isn't just about grandma's will anymore. Robert thinks we can prove undue influence if we can show a pattern of you manipulating family finances. Using your tech money to buy influence, control outcomes. My blood went ice cold. They want to use the hotel purchase as evidence against me in probate court. The optics are terrible, Mike. Wealthy grandson buys venue to spy on family discussions about contested inheritance. Any judge would see that as intimidation. 7 days until Danny arrived. 9 days until the family reunion that was now officially a trap. And I just walked directly into it. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I'd been so focused on orchestrating the perfect revenge that I'd handed my family exactly the ammunition they needed to destroy me in court. Uncle Robert wasn't just planning a legal strategy session, he was building a case that would paint me as an unhinged stalker using my wealth to intimidate and manipulate. Dad, listen to me carefully. Cancel the trip. What? Cancel the whole thing. Tell everyone there's been a family emergency, a scheduling conflict, anything. Just don't come to the resort. Michael, we've already paid deposits. Your mother's been planning this for months. Jennifer's taken time off work, Danny's already what? A pause. He left for the resort this morning. Drove up to Anacortes to catch the early ferry. Said he wanted to get there before checkout time to make sure his cabin was ready. My heart stopped. This morning. But his reservation doesn't start until tomorrow. He said he wanted to surprise everyone. Show up early, get the premium accommodations, make a good impression on the other guests before the family arrives. Dad's voice grew quieter. Mike, he's planning something. These past few weeks, he's been different. Confident in a way that makes me nervous. Like he knows something the rest of us don't. Because he does, I realized. Danny had figured out I owned the resort, maybe not definitively, but enough to gamble on it. His mysterious business proposition, the networking events, the premium cabin booking he couldn't afford. He wasn't just planning to pitch other guests. He was planning to publicly confront me as the owner, in front of the entire family and a lobby full of witnesses, painting himself as the victim of his wealthy brother's vindictive scheme. I have to go, I said, already reaching for my laptop to check ferry schedules. Michael, don't. Whatever you're thinking of doing, don't. Let us handle Danny. Let us. Handle him how, Dad? The same way you've been handling him for 15 years. By giving him money and making excuses and hoping this time will be different. He's still your brother. No, I said, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. A brother wouldn't contest Grandma's will. A brother wouldn't manipulate the family into taking sides against me. And a brother sure as hell wouldn't use my own hotel purchase as a weapon in court. I hung up and immediately called Margaret. Danny Caldwell is on his way to the resort right now. He'll probably arrive around 3 p.m. I need to get there before he does. The next seaplane doesn't leave until 4:30. Then charter one. I don't care what it costs. Michael, what's happening? You sound panic. Danny knows I own the resort. I don't know how much he's figured out, but he's planning to ambush me publicly. Turn this whole thing into a performance where he's the wronged brother and I'm the vindictive millionaire. Margaret was quiet for a moment. The harbor master's cabin has a private dock. If he arrives by ferry and takes a taxi directly there, he could check in without going through the main lobby. Can you delay his check-in? System problems, cleaning issues, anything. Better than that. The cabin's shower has been having pressure issues all week, nothing major, but enough to justify moving him to a different room while maintenance fixes it. Say, one of the standard rooms in the main lodge where every conversation echoes through the hallway. For the first time in days, I smiled. Margaret, you're diabolical. 41 years in hospitality, sweetheart. I've learned a few tricks. The chartered seaplane cost $3,200 for a 45-minute flight, but it meant I'd reach Orcas Island by 2:15 p.m. As the Seattle skyline disappeared beneath the clouds, I realized this was no longer about family drama or inheritance disputes or even revenge. This was about survival. Danny was coming to destroy me, and I had exactly 43 minutes to figure out how to stop him. The seaplane touched down at 2:12 p.m., 3 minutes ahead of schedule. Margaret was waiting at the dock in her Range Rover, engine running, looking like a general preparing for battle. Danny's ferry docked 20 minutes ago, she said as I threw my bag in the back seat. But we caught a break, his taxi broke down on Horseshoe Highway. AAA is dispatching a replacement, but it'll be at least another hour. I buckled my seatbelt as Margaret gunned it toward the resort. What's our play? Thomas moved him to room 237 in the main lodge, citing shower pressure issues in the harbor master's cabin. Sarah's handling check-in personally, she'll keep him busy with paperwork while you get situated in my office. If he asks about meeting the new owner, we'll tell him you're in Seattle until Monday. And if he's already figured out who I am. Margaret's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Then we improvise. We reached the resort at 2:31 p.m. The main lodge was busier than I'd seen it during my previous visits, families checking in for weekend stays, a wedding party rehearsing on the north lawn, staff preparing for the dinner rush. Normal vacation chaos that would provide perfect cover for whatever confrontation was about to unfold. I made it to Margaret's office without being seen, positioning myself at the window overlooking the main entrance. At 3:47 p.m., a yellow taxi pulled up to the circular drive. Danny stepped out looking like a man preparing for war. He'd lost weight since I'd seen him last, probably stress from the divorce and business failures, but he carried himself with an artificial confidence I recognized from his failed startup pitches. Designer jeans that were 2 seasons out of date, a polo shirt that probably came from his closet purge after the separation, and sunglasses that cost more than most people's monthly car payment. Most telling was the leather portfolio he carried. Not a vacation bag or casual paperwork. This was a presentation folder, the kind he'd used during his MBA program when he still thought business school had taught him how to conquer the world. He's got materials with him, I told Margaret, who was monitoring the front desk through security cameras on her computer. Sarah's stalling beautifully. She's explaining our sustainability initiatives in excruciating detail. Danny's trying to interrupt, but she's not letting him get a word in edgewise. I watched through the window as Danny shifted impatiently at the front desk, checking his phone every few seconds. He kept glancing around the lobby, studying faces, clearly looking for someone specific. Then his phone rang. Even through the closed office window, I could see the conversation was heated. Danny's posture changed, becoming more animated, more aggressive. He gestured toward the front desk, then toward the executive wing where Margaret's office was located. Margaret, he's looking this direction. I see it. Her voice was tense. Sarah says he just asked if any Microsoft executives are currently staying with us. When she gave him the standard privacy response, he mentioned having a meeting scheduled with the new ownership about cross-marketing opportunities. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, *, we need to talk. I know you're here. D*. He's got my cell number, I said, showing Margaret the screen. Probably got it from mom or dad. A second text arrived immediately, lobby in 5 minutes or I start making calls to the Seattle Times about your little hotel purchase. Margaret looked up from her monitor. He's threatening media exposure. The genius of Danny's plan was becoming clear. He couldn't prove I owned the resort, not definitively, but he could create enough public speculation to damage both my reputation and the legal case around Grandma's will. Tech CEO buys hotel to spy on family. Wealthy grandson's revenge plot. The headlines would write themselves, and by the time the truth came out, the damage would be done. But he'd made one crucial miscalculation. He assumed I'd be afraid of the publicity. Tell Sarah to send him up, I said, straightening my shirt and moving to sit behind Margaret's desk. If Danny wants to play games, let's see how good his poker face really is. Margaret stared at me. Are you sure about this? He's been underestimating me our entire lives. Time to find out what happens when a family disappointment owns the house. At 4:03 p.m., Sarah knocked on the office door. Mr. Caldwell. There's a Daniel Caldwell here to see you. He says it's about a business proposition. I smiled at Margaret, who was recording everything on her phone from the corner of the room. Send him in. Danny walked into Margaret's office like he owned the place, which would have been ironic if it weren't so infuriating. He'd ditched the sunglasses, revealing eyes that were bloodshot from what I assumed was a combination of stress and whatever he'd been drinking on the ferry ride over. Well, he said, settling into the chair across from Margaret's desk without being invited. Little brother Mike, playing hotel tycoon. Mom always said you'd do something crazy with all that tech money. Hello, Danny. I hear you have a business proposition for me. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Cut the shit, Mike. We both know why I'm here and why you bought this place. The question is what we're going to do about it. Margaret cleared her throat from her corner chair. I'm Margaret Thornfield, the previous owner. I'm staying on as a consultant during the transition. Danny barely glanced at her. Great. A witness. He opened his leather portfolio and pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. Mike, you've really stepped in at this time. Like, spectacularly. Have I? Buying a hotel to spy on your own family. Jesus Christ, even for you that's psychotic. He slid a printed email across the desk. Dad figured it out yesterday. Called Uncle Robert immediately. You want to know what Robert said? I glanced at the email, a chain between Dad, Uncle Robert, and someone named Mitchell Presben who I didn't recognize. The subject line read, Michael situation, urgent legal consultation required. Robert says you just handed us the probate case on a silver platter, Danny continued. Undue influence, financial intimidation, stalking behavior, all documented by your own purchase. Mitchell's flying in Tuesday specifically to depose you before the family even gets here. Who's Mitchell? Mitchell Presben. Robert's old law school buddy, now a partner at Cromwell and Associates. Specializes in contested estate cases. Danny's grin was sharp as broken glass. He's very interested in your little hotel acquisition. Thinks a judge would be fascinated by the timeline. Grandma dies in January, will gets contested in March, family reunion gets planned in April, you get uninvited in June, and suddenly you're buying the venue in July. The optics are fucking terrible, Mike. Margaret leaned forward. Mr. Caldwell, I should mention that your brother has been making some interesting requests since his arrival. Including asking for a list of all guests staying here this weekend and requesting access to our business center to host what he called networking opportunities. Danny's confident expression flickered for just a moment. That's completely separate. I have legitimate business connections in the hospitality industry. Do you? I asked, pulling out my own phone and opening the recording app. Tell me about these connections, Danny. Because according to our guest services manager, you've been cold calling other guests about investment opportunities. I haven't been. The Weinstock family from Microsoft. The retired Amazon VP in the Lighthouse Suite. You left messages for both of them about a unique partnership opportunity with what you called Seattle's most successful family business dynasty. I set the phone on the desk between us. Which family business were you referring to, exactly? Your food truck that lasted 6 weeks. The craft beer subscription service that never shipped a single box. Danny's face flushed red. Those were legitimate ventures that faced unexpected market challenges. Financed entirely by Dad's construction business, which you've nearly bankrupted with loan defaults. That's not $340,000 in defaulted loans, Danny. I've seen Dad's books. The business that was supposed to be your inheritance too. It's barely solvent because of your legitimate ventures. The silence stretched between us like a loaded spring. Margaret's phone continued recording from the corner, capturing every word of what was rapidly becoming a confession rather than a confrontation. Finally, Danny reached into his portfolio and pulled out a single sheet of paper. None of that matters now, he said, sliding it across the desk. Because I've got something you want, and you've got something I need. I looked down at the document. It was a withdrawal motion for the will contest, already signed and notarized, dated today. I dropped the probate case, Danny said quietly. Grandma's will stands as written. You get your inheritance, no legal challenges, no family drama. Clean slate. In exchange for what? His smile returned, colder than before. You give me the hotel. I stared at the withdrawal motion, my brain struggling to process what Danny had just proposed. You want me to give you a $35 million resort. Think of it as a lateral transfer. You get Grandma's $4.1 million inheritance free and clear. I get a business opportunity that's actually worth something. Danny leaned back in his chair, looking pleased with himself. Simple math, Mike. You're still ahead by $30 million. Except the hotel is worth $35 million, not 4. Your math is off by about $31 million. My math accounts for legal fees, court costs, family relationships, and your reputation. He tapped the withdrawal motion with one finger. Mitchell Presben charges $850 an hour. A contested probate case like this could drag on for 2 years, especially once we start deposing your business partners about your emotional stability and pattern of using wealth as a weapon against family members. Margaret shifted in her corner chair. Mr. Daniel Caldwell, are you attempting to extort my former business from your brother? I'm proposing a family solution to a family problem, Danny said smoothly. Mike gets what Grandma wanted him to have. I get a chance to finally build something legitimate instead of being written off as the family failure. Everyone wins. Everyone except the family that's arriving here in 6 days expecting a reunion, not a legal battlefield, I said. Danny's expression hardened. That's on you, Mike. You're the one who turned a vacation into a revenge plot. I'm offering you a way out that doesn't end with newspaper headlines about the unhinged tech CEO who bought a hotel to stalk his relatives. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica, *urgent, need to discuss probate complications. Available for call, *. The timing couldn't be worse, but I had to know what she discovered. I need to take this call. Make it quick, Danny said. Mitchell's expecting an answer by 6 p.m., and I've got other guests to network with before dinner. I stepped onto Margaret's private balcony overlooking the sound, closing the door behind me before calling Jessica back. Michael, we have a problem, she said immediately. I just got served with a motion to expedite your probate hearing. They're asking for an emergency session on July 20th, 3 days after your family reunion ends. On what grounds? New evidence of potential undue influence and financial coercion. Someone provided the court with documentation of your recent significant hospitality industry investment and its timing relative to family legal disputes. Jessica's voice was grim. They're arguing that your hotel purchase demonstrates a pattern of using wealth to manipulate family dynamics, which supports their claim that you manipulated your grandmother similarly. Through the balcony window, I could see Danny examining Margaret's bookshelf like he already owned it. The bastard had planned this perfectly, force a confrontation while his legal team ambushed me in court, creating maximum pressure from both directions. There's more, Jessica continued. The motion includes a request to freeze all assets derived from your grandmother's estate pending the expedited hearing. If granted, you'd lose access to the $4.1 million inheritance while the case proceeds. They can't freeze assets I haven't received yet. They can if the court believes you're using other assets to interfere with the probate process. Michael, buying that hotel was brilliant as a power play, but legally it's a disaster. Any judge is going to see it as intimidation. I watched a seaplane bank toward the resort's marina, probably carrying weekend guests who had no idea they were about to witness a family civil war played out in luxury accommodations. Jessica, what happens if I actually give Danny the hotel? A long pause. That would look like an admission of guilt. Plus, transferring a $35 million asset to a family member during active litigation raises its own legal questions. Money laundering, tax evasion, fraudulent conveyance, the IRS alone would have a field day. Danny knocked on the balcony door, tapping his watch and pointing at his phone. 6 o'clock deadline approaching. I had exactly 17 minutes to decide whether to fight a legal battle I was destined to lose, or surrender the perfect revenge to save an inheritance I didn't even need. Either way, Danny had already won. I hung up on Jessica and walked back into Margaret's office, where Danny was now sitting in Margaret's chair behind the desk like he'd already taken ownership. The sight of him there, in the space I'd fought so hard to control, made something cold and calculating settle in my chest. "Time's up, Mike," he said, checking his Rolex, probably the one Dad had given him for his MBA graduation before the first business failure. "Mitchell's waiting for my call." "What's it going to be?" "I have a counterproposal," I said, taking the seat across from what was technically my own desk. "You want the hotel? Prove you can run it." Danny's confident smirk faltered. "What?" "1-week trial period. Starting right now. You handle the family reunion as acting general manager, every detail, every request, every crisis that comes up. If you can successfully manage 14 guests for 7 days without a single complaint, without going over budget, and without creating any incidents that damage the resort's reputation, I'll transfer ownership to you for the cost of Grandma's inheritance." 4.1 million. Margaret's eyebrows shot up. Even she hadn't expected this twist. "That's still 30 million below market value," Danny said slowly. "That's 30 million more than you have. Unless you've been hiding some successful ventures I don't know about." I leaned forward. "But here's the catch, if you fail, if even one family member complains about their experience, if you make even one decision that costs the resort money or reputation, you withdraw the will contest permanently and never contact any family member about Grandma's inheritance again." Danny stared at me for a long moment, clearly trying to identify the trap he was certain existed. "What constitutes failure?" "Guest satisfaction scores below 90% from our family group. Any incident requiring management intervention from Margaret or Thomas. Any expense overruns on the activities you've been promising everyone. Any negative reviews posted online during or immediately after their stay." I smiled. "Oh, and you have to do it all while paying for your harbor master's cabin stay with your own credit card. No family bailouts. The cabin cost $7,000 for 2 nights. Then maybe you should have booked something within your means. Unless you were planning to stick Mom and Dad with the bill as usual." Danny's face flushed red, confirming my suspicion. Margaret coughed delicately from her corner. "There's also the matter of your networking activities," she said. "Several guests have complained about unsolicited business pitches. The Weinstock specifically asked to be moved to rooms farther from yours after you knocked on their door at 7 a.m. about investment opportunities. I was being proactive about relationship building. You were being a predatory salesman at a luxury resort," I cut him off. "Which is exactly the kind of incident that would constitute failure under my proposal." Danny pulled out his phone, presumably to text Mitchell about the delay, but I could see his hands shaking slightly. The confidence he'd walked in with was cracking as he realized I wasn't going to be intimidated into surrender. "1 week, he said finally. "But I want the terms in writing. And if I succeed, the transfer happens immediately, no legal delays, no additional conditions." "Agreed. Margaret, can you draft something?" "Already started," she said, holding up her phone where she'd been typing. "This is the most entertaining business negotiation I've seen in 40 years. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom, *, Danny called. Says you're at the resort. What's going on? *. The family was about to learn that their carefully orchestrated legal ambush had just turned into a very public test of whether their golden child could actually succeed at anything. 5 days until they all arrived to watch him try. The contract took 3 hours to draft, with Margaret, Danny, and me arguing over every clause while Thomas handled the evening dinner service and pretended not to notice the family drama unfolding in the executive office. By 9:47 p.m., we had a document that was either the most elaborate revenge plot in hospitality history or the stupidest business decision I'd ever made. Danny signed with a flourish, his confidence returning as he convinced himself this was just another negotiation he'd won through superior strategy. What he didn't realize was that I'd been getting hourly updates from Thomas about the resort's actual operational challenges, a broken ice machine in the East Wing, a delayed food delivery that required menu changes, and a wedding party demanding a full refund because the bride's dog wasn't allowed in the ceremony space. "One more thing," I said as Danny capped his Mont Blanc pen, probably another graduation gift he'd never earned the right to carry. "Mom's been texting. The family knows you're here, and they know I'm here. Someone's going to have to explain this situation before they arrive." Danny's smile was sharp as winter. "Already handled. I called Uncle Robert an hour ago. Told him you'd agreed to discuss a reasonable settlement and that we were working out the details in person. Very mature, very family-oriented approach to conflict resolution. And he bought that. Robert's a lawyer, Mike. He knows that most cases settle before trial, and he knows that public family disputes are expensive for everyone involved." Danny pocketed the signed contract. "What he doesn't know is that by the time this week is over, I'll own a $35 million resort and you'll be the brother who gave up everything to avoid a fight." Margaret stood up from her corner chair, stretching muscles that had been tensed for hours of legal negotiations. "Gentlemen, it's nearly 10 p.m. and I have an early morning tomorrow. Danny, your room key is at the front desk. We moved you to 237 as discussed. The harbor master's cabin will be ready Tuesday afternoon once maintenance completes the shower repairs." "About that," Danny said. "I've decided to stay in the main lodge. Better for networking with other guests, closer to the action during the reunion. More visible leadership presence." Of course he had. Danny had probably realized that the harbor master's cabin would isolate him from the family drama he was hoping to orchestrate, and visibility was crucial to his performance as the wronged brother who'd stepped up to save everyone's vacation. "Room 237 it is," Margaret said smoothly. I should mention that it's directly adjacent to the Yamamoto wedding party's hospitality suite. They're celebrating until 2 a.m. tonight, and they have early morning activities starting at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I hope you're a sound sleeper. Danny's confident expression flickered. Maybe there's a quieter room available. Unfortunately, we're fully booked this weekend. July is peak season. Margaret's smile was perfectly professional and completely merciless. I'm sure you understand, hotel operations can be quite challenging during busy periods. I watched Danny process the implications of what he'd signed up for. 4 nights of wedding party noise, followed by 7 days of managing our family's impossible expectations, all while pretending he was qualified to run a luxury resort he'd never seen before today. My phone buzzed with another text from Mom. Robert says you and Danny are working things out. Thank God. Jennifer's so relieved she might actually enjoy her vacation. Tomorrow, Jennifer and the advance family contingent would arrive expecting reconciliation and compromise. Instead, they'd find Danny playing hotel manager while I watched from the sidelines, waiting for him to prove he was as incapable of succeeding at this as he'd been at everything else. For days until the real show began. The family reunion officially began at 2:17 p.m. on July 15th when Mom's rental van pulled up to the main lodge entrance. I watched from Margaret's office window as 14 relatives climbed out, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else on earth. The tension was visible even from 3 floors up. Danny had lasted exactly 18 hours as acting general manager. His first failure came at 11:23 p.m. the night before, when he'd marched down to the Yamamoto wedding reception and demanded they keep it down to a reasonable volume because he had important business calls in the morning. The bride's father, a semiconductor executive worth roughly $200 million, had politely informed Danny that they'd reserved the hospitality suite specifically for their celebration, and perhaps he'd be more comfortable in different accommodations. Danny's response, "Do you know who I am? I'm the manager here," had resulted in Thomas being called from his own bed to apologize to guests who were threatening to check out immediately and leave scathing reviews on every travel site in existence. Strike 1. Strike 2 came at 6:47 a.m. when Danny, hungover and sleep-deprived, had gotten into a shouting match with our head chef about changing the breakfast menu to something more cost-effective. The chef, a James Beard nominee who'd worked at the resort for 8 years, had quit on the spot. Thomas spent 3 hours convincing him to stay while Danny sulked in the business center, trying to figure out how to operate the espresso machine. Strike 3 was still developing in real time as I watched Danny attempt to greet our parents at the front entrance. Even from a distance, I could see Mom's confused expression as Danny tried to explain why he was wearing a name tag that read, Acting General Manager, and why there was a luggage cart blocking the main entrance because he'd forgotten to coordinate with the bellhop staff. "This is painful to watch," Margaret said, joining me at the window. "Your cousin Jennifer looks like she's about to murder someone." Jennifer had indeed noticed the chaos. I could see her pulling Uncle Robert aside, gesturing toward the front desk where a line of irritated guests was forming because Danny had insisted on personally handling the family check-in process despite having no idea how to operate the reservation system. My phone rang. "Thomas. Sir, I need to invoke the management intervention clause. Your brother just told the Weinstock family that their room service order was probably a mistake and asked if they really needed champagne at 2 p.m. Mrs. Weinstock is demanding to speak with the actual owner. Handle it however you normally would, Thomas." Danny's trial period just ended. I hung up and headed for the elevator. Time to make my entrance. The lobby was in chaos when I arrived. Danny stood behind the front desk like a deer in headlights while Mom tried to apologize to a line of guests, Dad attempted to move luggage that Danny had personally stacked in the wrong location, and Jennifer frantically typed on her phone, probably researching legal ramifications. Uncle Robert saw me first. "Michael. Thank God. Can you please explain what's happening here?" "Danny's demonstrating his hotel management skills," I said loudly enough for the entire lobby to hear. "As part of our settlement negotiation." I walked to the front desk, where Danny was sweating through his polo shirt and stabbing uselessly at the computer screen. "How's it going, brother?" "The system's malfunctioning," he said desperately. "None of the reservation codes are working." Sarah appeared beside me with a tablet. "Guest satisfaction survey results from this morning, Mr. Caldwell. The Yamamoto wedding party rated their experience at 62% due to unprofessional management interference. The Weinstocks are at 41% citing intrusive sales pitches and inappropriate service questioning." I turned to address my family, who were watching this unfold with growing understanding. Danny had a week to prove he could manage this resort successfully. Guest satisfaction below 90% constitutes automatic failure. I held up the contract we'd signed. Per our agreement, he now withdraws his contest of grandmas will permanently and transfers all claims to her estate. Mom's face went white. "Michael, you bought this place." "I bought it when you uninvited me from my own family reunion." Danny just gambled away his inheritance trying to take it from me. Dad stepped forward, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "What does this mean for the family?" I looked around at 14 relatives who'd spent 30 years treating me like an inconvenience, gathered in a lobby of a resort I owned, watching their golden child finally face consequences for his failures. "It means grandma's will stands exactly as she wrote it. It means Danny's business failures stop being everyone else's financial emergency. And it means you all have a lovely vacation in a hotel owned by the family member you tried to throw away." I handed Sarah the tablet. "Please ensure the Caldwell family receives our finest service this week. Every amenity, every courtesy, completely complimentary." Margaret appeared at my elbow, smiling like a proud grandmother. "After all," I continued, "family harmony is what matters most." The look on Danny's face was worth every penny of $35 million.